We could have waited a lot longer.
During the meeting right now.
And we're back. Okay, let's go to item number 5. This is a training, Utah Open Public Meetings Act. We're going to turn the time over to Brian Miller, who is our city attorney.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to get into the really exciting stuff tonight. You guys have been troopers. And then I'm just reminded that I'm going to be back here at 7:30 at this podium in front of a judge here in the same room. This is where we have our municipal court, and so. All right, going to power through this to see if we can't get you out, get done with this, so you guys can move on through meeting in about 15 minutes or something. Open Meeting and Public Meeting, Utah Open and Public Meetings Act. This is something that we do annually, this training. We want to make sure that that we stay on top of things. It's pretty straightforward. There's not many change. If you guys have heard this before, we haven't really had, I think there's one minor change since last year. But the idea is that we take all of our actions openly as well as all of our deliberations openly. That's the purpose of the act. The court has said we interpret the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act broadly to further the declared statutory purpose of openness. Because we construe the act broadly, it therefore follows that the exceptions must be strictly construed, and there are only a few exceptions. Okay, actions open and deliberations open. Now, this one, I like this one. Because here in this comic we have, are the actions open? The actions are open, but the deliberation's not open. They talked about this ahead of time. Who is subject to this law? Administrative, advisory, executive, or legislative body that was created under statute or resolution or ordinance, a body of 2 or more persons, spends, distributes, or is supported by taxpayer money. We're here being supported by taxpayer money at this moment, has authority to make decisions about public business. But that also includes advisory. So out of administrative, advisory, executive, and legislative, what is the Planning Commission? Generally, it's advisory, right? I guess there can be some things that can be delegated, some decision making. So, well, okay, a library board, for example. We have a library board here. What is that? Do they fall under open meetings? They would. They meet that criteria on the other page or on the other slide. Now, we call these sunshine laws. We want to have light shown on what we're doing, transparency for the public, so the public can see and trust what we're doing. Whether they agree or not is a different thing. But they need to know with public decisions how they're coming about, who's making them, and what the basis is. A meeting. What is a meeting? It's when a public body such as this meets, when you have a quorum present. It can include workshops or executive sessions, and it can be an in-person meeting or an electronic meeting. We'll touch on electronic in a minute. And this is for the purpose of discussing, receiving comments from the public, or acting on a matter over which the public body has jurisdiction or advisory power.
Brian, can I ask you a question on
Yes.
that one? It says a quorum is present. In our previous training, she said that only one planning commissioner could be, there for a city. for us, it's 4. Is that determined by the city, or is it state that determines what a quorum is, or?
So the quorum would be the majority of the
2.
body.
Okay,
So we have, everybody's here,
6.
we have 6.
so you'd have to have 4.
So we'd have to have 4 to have a quorum. My understanding.
Okay, I also have a question about this too. So if after a public commission meeting, afterwards, a number of us just get together to talk about something that was discussed, just trying to understand something, at what point is that not appropriate? Because I always figured, well, it's not an official meeting. We're not receiving, we're not doing any of those things except for discussing, but it's not at a actual public meeting or a public commission meeting. It's after the fact. And at what point are we commissioners and private citizens?
So when you have a quorum,
What's the next slide?
so if 2 of you want to discuss something, that's fine. If you want to reach out independently to each person separately at a separate time, that's fine as well. But when you have a majority of the body getting together and discussing this, where basically they can then later show up at the meeting and say, we've already got it all figured out and we have the votes, that's what we're trying to avoid here. Now, you can get together as a quorum, or a number that would be a quorum, but if you're not discussing or taking action or anything like that, then it's not a public meeting.
What if you're discussing something that you've already made the decision to recommend, and it wouldn't be coming back to us?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I don't want to say that that's fine, that that's not a problem, but it's not really something that's going to put the city at risk if that decision has already been made and passed on. The intent is that the deliberations are open, that people know what is being discussed and considered ramping up to the decision, and that the decision itself is also made publicly. So at that point, you've done the deliberations and you've made the decision making. That's what has to happen in an open meeting. So discussing a decision that has been made would be okay. A meeting, not a chance encounter, not a social meeting. For example, if you are all at a holiday party, that's not a meeting. If you're all at a ribbon cutting for a business that's opening, that's not a meeting. You're not there for the purpose, and you're not doing deliberations or taking public comment or taking an action. So 3 trustees walk into a tavern, did a public meeting breakout. And I'll give you the typical law school answer. It depends. And it depends on, well, why are they there? And what are they doing there? But just because they're there and they want to have a drink or whatever they're doing there, if it's social, then it's not a meeting. So we have electronic meetings, but those electronic meetings hold the same standards as an in-person meeting, which makes them very difficult because, depending on the meeting, you have to be able to interact and receive comments from the public, and have kind of a dialogue amongst the commissioners. And so it does make it pretty difficult, and it's not something that occurs. This one's very specific. It does not want members of the public body to use electronic messages during the public meeting to other commissioners about the subject or the other members of the body, things like that, because that's not open. That's something that can be hidden, and that's not public. I mean, you can text your spouse and say you're going to be a little bit late, but don't send one to the other end of the group. Say, hey, I'll vote nay if you vote nay. Don't do that. Closed meetings. These are specific circumstances, I suppose it happens occasionally in Planning Commission. The narrow scope of the exceptions is if you're discussing somebody's character, professional competence, or their physical or mental health. That's broad. Another situation is if you're discussing imminent litigation, if you know that, the city's going to be sued based on a decision that has been made. Discussions regarding security personnel devices or systems, that probably doesn't apply. And then the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property or water rights. So for the property sales, we don't want to show our hand if it's going to be detrimental to negotiations or the city's position, and that's why that's permitted for us to basically have kind of negotiations or considerations in a closed meeting. There are no meetings that must be closed. It actually is discretionary, but they typically follow on those that short list that I had up there. None of those exceptions apply here. Read that. And this is funny, and maybe it's true, but this is not what we want. This is the process of closing meetings. You must have a quorum present, and then at least 2/3 of the present members must vote to close the meeting. So say we have 4, you need 3 votes. You need beyond that 2/3 threshold to move into a closed meeting. Body must first hold public meeting with proper notice before entering closed meeting. So it's kind of like we're just having the normal meeting, we show up, and then somebody makes the motion, we get the 2/3 of the people there to move into the public meeting.
But we would know if
meeting.
a closed meeting was going to be necessary, right? I wouldn't just one day come and say, I want a closed meeting, and then she says, well, I want to know what she wants to talk about, and, we know when one's coming.
Yeah, that's typical. I think we typically have it by default on our agenda at the very end anyway. I mean, that does give the opportunity. Generally, we don't like surprises, but I suppose somebody could move into, or make a motion to move into a closed meeting, and if it's approved by the body, then you can do that at that time, and hopefully it's something that's falls under one of those categories. If it's if it doesn't, it shouldn't be at a closed meeting, and that could put the city at risk for being sued or some sort of consequence. The vote by name of each member for or against entering a closed meeting. So it is a roll call vote. We need to know who's saying yes and who's saying no to move into that. And then the reason for holding that. Obviously, if it's going to be closed, it doesn't need to be very specific. You just make the motion to discuss pending litigation. That would be sufficient basis. The record also needs to state, the motion should state where you are for the closed meeting. Here's a list of what you cannot do at a closed meeting. You can't approve any ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, contract, or appointment. Those need to be done publicly. You can't interview people for a public elected position or take any final actions. It's mostly just for discussion. These are the notice requirements for open meetings. 24 hours prior, our staff takes care of the notice. Emergencies. Sometimes it's necessary. It'd be very rare, I think, for the Planning Commission. I'm not sure if it's happened before, but you could have a meeting less than 24 hours, not needing that 24-hour notice period. You still have to try and notice people, and you'd have to have a very specific emergency that you can articulate that would corroborate that decision. Minutes, you guys see the minutes, you guys approve the minutes each time from prior meetings. They are the official record. This is the easy way for somebody to go back and find information through grandma requests. All right. Basically, we just need to have the minutes available. They're public record under grandma, and should have them up and available within 3 days. On quickly here. Okay, posted materials distributed at a meeting, posted on the Utah Public Notice website, and made available at the city offices within 3 days. What happens if somebody violates? That's the criminal charge right there. If it's a knowing and intentionally abusing this act, then you could potentially be charged with a Class B misdemeanor. Quite rare. More frequently, a court can void the action that was taken at the illegal meeting. There can be other cures by discussing and taking a public vote in a subsequent meeting, kind of a redo, where you're hitting the deliberations and the decision making publicly when you should have prior. If you get sued, potentially the city's on the hook for the legal costs. Common violations: closing meetings without members of the body voting first in an open meeting to close the meeting, conducting a closed meeting for reasons other than those allowed under the act, discussing similar but unauthorized matters during the closed meeting. So we want to be narrow with our scope, what we're talking about. Taking an official or final action in a closed meeting, failing to properly provide notice of a public meeting. Who can enforce it? The courts. Attorney General, that's somebody that would go after somebody criminally, or the county attorney. But probably the most likely would be a private citizen that would come and file a lawsuit. It's not, and again, frequently that's something where basically they're just seeking a court order to go back and redo it and make it public and appropriate, and then the city foots the legal bill. We have 90 days to pursue corrective action, but it's quicker if it's got a fiscal situation attached. So again, let the sunshine in, make everything public. I mean, it's not worth trying to do anything secret to risk yourselves or the city. You guys are here doing a great service because you guys care about your community, and you guys know that it's appropriate for our community to know how decisions are being made. Appreciate you guys. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll do this again next year.
Thank you.
Thank you for that training.
Kept on time.
17 minutes. Awesome. Close enough. Close enough. Legal definition.
All right, item number 6, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? If so,
I have a comment on the minutes. On line 280 plus, the ayes and the nays don't match up. Okay, thank you.
I beat you to it.
You know what?
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry, I didn't email. That's it for me.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of Planning Commission February 8, 2018.
A motion from,
Second.
we have a second. Is there a question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 7, commission comments.
I think I wanted to make one comment. I want to clarify my position from last time where I think I said something, it wasn't in the minutes, so I guess maybe it's not that big a deal, but I said something about I am 100% against LED lights. I misspoke. What I meant to say was I'm against making a recommendation on something that I didn't have I felt like I didn't have all the legal and I don't know, future impacts information in order to make that decision. So I'm not against I'm not 100% against anything. I think it's always based on what information we have. So I just wanted to clarify that I'm not trying to take a stand against any kind of thing that's categorical, but it's always going to be nuanced by legalities, by the direction that we want to go, the feeling of the residents, things like that. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'll just make the same one I have made so many times. We need to be acting on some of these illegal signs. What happens is one person comes in and it doesn't get acted on by code enforcement, and then another one comes, and then all of a sudden you have a garden of them. And I don't know what we can do to, I'm afraid we're going to get in trouble.
About just signs, as people just throwing signs up, on street corners, things like that.
Right. Because then if we don't enforce on them, then it could be construed that we are approving them. And all of a sudden, we will not have the ability to restrict snipe signs in particular.
Yeah, probably just what we need to do. Our intern was trying to do some of that. We've lost him now, so we don't have an intern anymore. We're losing our planner 1, so we'll be without a planner 1 for probably 2 months until we get that position filled. And so really, probably just have to work through Sam and code enforcement. That's probably our best option right now, just due to our workloads.
There have been some signs I have reported since October.
Directly to Sam?
To the planning department, and they gave it to Sam.
Okay.
So we really need to start enforcing, or we're going to.
Yeah, and the snipe signs are just a pain. I mean, because they go up overnight, you take them down, they'll go up again the next day, especially on the weekends.
Oh, this is day trading my money.
Yeah.
But there's one sign that out on Redwood Road that has been nailed to a power pole, and I have a real problem with that.
When I was in a previous city, I had a garden tool that had like 4 prongs. I'd just pull into that sign, just smash that sign and pull it down. But I would, in that position, I would do that weekly. I'd do a route and I'd fill up the back of a truck.
Oh my goodness.
I've seen the police officers pulling them down.
Yeah.
What happens is they never get the nails out, and if you have a pole climber, that lots of times will make them fall, and then the results of that are not pretty.
Yeah. I just say send me any of those locations, and we'll do our best.
Okay.
The city also has their, what's the website, their app? The City Source app, where you can,
Take a picture.
it may be slow, but they
Submit.
Okay.
do get to them.
I'm not familiar with that. So.
Yeah, it's City Source, where you can take a picture and it does the GPS on the exact coordinates, and you can put the violation. It's worked well.
I finally got a device that I could do that on, except I'm having problems trying to take pictures in the daylight.
Go talk to an 8-year-old.
Good point. Anyway.
All right, any other commission comments? Director's report.
Well, we'll just give you a brief on what happened at City Council. You're probably all aware, but they did approve the amendments to the community plan at the crossing. They did approve Village Plan 2. Some of the changes are the applicant had been asking for auto-related uses as permitted uses. Those are not going to be permitted. They'll still be conditional. So auto sales, auto repair, tire sales, those are still conditional use. So the Les Schwab, if they still want to go there, they'll come in through a conditional use. And of course, you will then see that because that's the process. It will go to the City Council via the Planning Commission. LED signs were approved, 2 of them, one at 50 square feet on Redwood, one at 70 square feet on Pioneer. So the existing sign here on Redwood, the 2 vacant cabinets is 50 square feet, so those will be replaced with an LED. they'll be allowed to use that for, technically any business on site can use it, but we can't restrict it, but the owner, Boyer Company, will restrict it most likely just to the theater. That's their intent. It will have a refresh rate of 12 seconds, no less. They could go more if they want, but they can't go less than 12 seconds. It'll be dimmed at night. It'll go down. The parking lot lights for Fat Cats and the lighting on the building will stay up until 1 a.m. or an hour after. Obviously, theaters get out late. There's a security issue. We discussed this. Security issue for theaters, people getting out, and that was a legitimate concern. So there'll be different lighting regulations for that. I'm trying at the top of my head what else. Of course, the signs was the biggest one.
What are we looking for in future agendas coming up?
Coming up, I should have that in front of me. I don't have it on my computer.
There's 2 public hearings.
Yeah,
It's
let me just bring it up here, see what we've got. It'll take just a second. Pull up the tracker. You have the tracker open there, Nikki? No, I can get it here in about 10 seconds.
Do all of you know about the public notice website?
I heard about it today.
The Utah Public Notice?
Well, I've been using it now for, since before I got on the commission. And if you join it, then they will send you, as soon as an agenda is posted on the public notice website, which is always 2 weeks in advance for us, and it'll tell us what's on our next agenda.
Do you want to send us that link?
Hi.
An email?
Okay, so coming up, next meeting will be March 8. Tentatively scheduled right now is the mixed residential zone text that would deal with the North Shore. This is the D.R. Horton project, would be the McLaughlin rezone. Obviously, or annexation, excuse me. That property hasn't been annexed yet because there's the whole process of what they're going to get as part of the annexation. And D.R. Horton's picking up that property, and so they want to propose what's called a mixed residential zone, because what they want to do, we don't have a zone that fits what they want. They're not big enough to be part of the PC. And so we've thrown out the idea of doing a mixed residential zone. They've got some text that we're looking at now for that. Then, of course, they'll bring in their concept plan as a work session.
And when is that?
That will be on March 8th. These are tentative right now. I'm still looking if they're confirmed or not. Everything right now on the 8th is tentative. A couple of Mount Saratoga plats, the engineering standards, as Nikki mentioned. Mountain Land Head Start on Marie Way. They're looking to put a facility there. There'll be conditional use permits that will go on to the city council. So those will be on the items right now that we have tentative for March 8th. Those will be finalized next week.
In this mixed residential zone, what's the other use besides residential?
Residential.
So residential
Different
and more
densities,
residential?
different types of, basically what they're looking at, they want to do a master plan of residential.
Okay.
But I want to say they have 130 acres or so, and so we don't have anything in the code. We try to get them towards the mixed use zone, because we would like to see some commercial there too. Several things in the mixed zone did not fit what they want to do. So the next option was, we had been talking to them in the past about do a PC light type zone. Basically what they want to kind of transfer legacy to this property here, what they're calling North Shore. And so with that, they'll have this mixed residential zone to, specify densities, it'll basically, it'll be a zone where anyway then could then put anywhere else in the city. There'll be a minimum acreage. Right now we have 50 acre minimums we're working with. The applicant feels like to get a decent master plan community, 50 acres would be the minimum that you'd want to look at. So whatever that acreage ends up being, that would be the minimum. So not anybody could just go put this anywhere they want. That would be a big thing. And to put together 50 acres could be a challenge for a lot of people. So again, it's a draft form right now. I've skimmed through it. I don't have all the details, but it's something that would be a good discussion item.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for coming and for your preparation. Without objection, we adjourn.
the agenda that I got for next meeting, it was going to be an easy one, but